Before we begin, it's really important to acknowledge that the Austin Convention Center is on Indigenous land. And the reason for that is, and we'll get into this more in a second, is Web3-a-thon is all about building hyper-local solutions that solve some of the systemic injustices that exist in today's society. And one group that's been super affected by that is obviously Indigenous communities. So on that note, we'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the Indigenous lands of Turtle Island, the ancestral name for what is now called North America. We'd like to acknowledge the Alabama Cushata, Caro, Carrizo Comecrudo, Tehuiltecan, Comanche, Kickapoo, Lipanapache, Tonkawa, and Isleta del Sur Pueblo, and all the American Indian and Indigenous peoples and communities who've been or have become a part of these lands and territories in Texas. This is also being live streamed to folks all over the world, so we invite you to identify the Indigenous peoples of the land on which you reside. A link to nativeland.ca is in the description of this stream. And on that note, I would like to welcome you to this day's Web3-a-thon programming. For those of you who don't know, Web3-a-thon is a 3-month completely virtual hackathon. And the reason we've set it up this way is because we believe that the true utility of blockchain technology is going to come from people who understand the problems they're trying to solve. And the best way to do that is by looking where you live and seeing the problems you know about and what you can solve. So yesterday we had some amazing panels that went over some interesting use cases of blockchain. We talked about UX heuristics, which is a good first principle to start with as you're going into whatever your project might be. But today's panels are focused on each of our hyperlocal themes. Anyone who's trying to think of a project they want to work on that's going to be focused on one of these themes will be setting you up with foundational knowledge so you can build with a real awareness. But before we dig into all that, today's first panel is about what makes hackathons successful. So if you've never been a part of a hackathon before, or if you have and you want to hear our take on it, we've brought together some of the most amazing panelists I can think of who are all super invested in creating an inclusive Web3 and using hackathons as a vehicle to achieve that change. So let's welcome our panelists to the stage.
After you.
Who's going first? Is it me? Hello. Hi.
As they're coming up, I'm just going to sort of dig into their introductions. Closest to me, we have Tracey Bowen, also known as Onali. She is the founder of H.E.R DAO and a visionary and an activist. H.E.R DAO is a woman-focused DAO focused on getting women into Web3. She's previously been an artist, a researcher, and civic tech entrepreneur, and she's been building Web3 social impact projects in DeFi infrastructure and NFTs. Up next, we have Kayode. He's the executive director of the Africa Blockchain Institute. He's a digital transformation enthusiast, and he's really motivated by academic diversity. He's also an African blockchain ecosystem leader. Next, we have Daniela Peralvo. She's the co-founder of IMPAQTO, which is the first B Corp in Ecuador, and it's an ecosystem builder that supports impact startups, consulting services, and an impact investment fund. And of course, she's also a crypto enthusiast. And finally, we have Ellis Norman, who's the VP of Partnerships at HackerEarth, which is the global leader in hackathons and a community of over 7 million developers. And he is the turnkey partner for Web3-a-thon. So for everyone looking to register, that's web3athon.hackerearth.com. But we're so glad to have you all on the stage. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So I guess just to sort of set us up, Ellis, can you tell us what a hackathon is?
Absolutely. So a hackathon is essentially a structured exercise in innovation and problem solving. So traditionally, they're a 24-hour to weekend-long event that invites developers, innovators, and other enthusiasts to basically create solutions, apps, or other technologies around a theme or a sponsor's specific technology. Great place for networking, for talent identification, for investment opportunities. And like you said, with HackerEarth, with a 7 million developer community and ultimately as the largest provider of hackathons globally, we're really seeing a shift in hackathons currently, where they're being used more often as a kind of strategic resource within the toolkit to look forward to community growth and community building as well. And ultimately, like we had seen in the Web3-a-thon, which is going on from now until the middle of September, we're focusing on a longer-term format that is a little bit more forgiving, gives some more space for education, and ultimately can provide for a better platform for better products at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I think what you were saying about hackathons being an opportunity to build community is really significant, especially to the work, Kayode, I know that you've done in building out sort of the hackathon ecosystem, not just like, all over Africa, as I understand it.
Absolutely. So we all live in a community where we have people from various backgrounds. Most of our neighbors could be lawyers, could be engineers, could be pilots. And the most interesting thing about you being in a particular community is that some of us don't even know that there's a particular problem operating in that particular community. The closest example is when we have a water pipe got burst in our community. That's evidence. Everybody knows that the water pipe have got busted, and we need to fix that. But there are more deeper problems that are not really open and visible for everybody to see. And that's when we now see somebody solving that particular problem, they'll be like, oh, that problem actually exists. It's not that those problems don't exist. The fact is that the problem actually exists. As a human being, we already have a tolerance level that we have put across to this particular problem. And so when we now realize that that problem exists, we're trying to put solution to it. Now back to community, is that being in community, we have those folks that I mentioned, astronaut, pilot, being our neighbor in that particular community. And the coming together of those folks participating in hackathon programs bring the change to the community they are looking for. And first is, if you have them participate in hackathon program, they get to go through several different dynamic challenges that need for them to understand. Can you hear me now?
Yay! You can try it for yourself.
Interesting. So, okay, just roll over back to community where we all have neighbors, where they're engineers, astronauts, and again, we have problems in our community that are not really quite visible for us to see until when somebody go ahead and produce solutions to this particular problem. Now, for those kind of community, when they come together as a community to work on a hackathon program, that is when we now have to see the change in that particular community. And that way, they want to participate in hackathon program in different challenges for them to understand whether they even have a problem to start with, or what other problem are they not seeing that they're going to discover to the hackathon program. And second is about the experience. You know, hackathon, the juice of hackathon program is the experience, where we get to network and also where we get to learn. You know, this is a very interesting experience that we get from hackathon program. And the last one is about the implementation action. You know, it's good to learn about hackathon, it's good to be in hackathon program, but what are your action after the hackathon program? That's what happened in community.
Well, I know that IMPAQTO has a really interesting philosophy sort of around making sure projects are something that are sustainable. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, Daniela? Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. So yeah, we have been working with impact startups in Latin America, so we have a lot of experience with Web2 hackathons. And from our experience, like, as you mentioned, it's all about the community, it's all about really falling in love with the problems and then going and develop the solutions. From that space, we have seen so many hackathon participants that they start with that solutions and then they actually scale them in all the different regions. So also becoming partners with other organizations like NGOs, like private sector, government, that's really key so we can actually have a better impact in what we're doing. But it's all about first the problem, it's all about the people, it's all about the partners, and then you can just go and scale the different solutions that we are developing.
Absolutely. One thing that has been really special about putting Web3athon together is that we're actually partnered with the city of Austin, where the folks who are in person are today. And the reason for that is it's a great example and an opportunity to show how some of these problems are showing up in actual communities. And so if you go to our Web3athon resources page, you'll see that each of our challenge briefs have actual data and actual information provided by the city to show you how these challenges show up in communities. And I think it's really exciting to use as an example to think about, well, how's that showing up where I live? Like, I don't live in Austin. It'd be pretty weird for me to tell people in Austin how to live as someone who doesn't live here. But if I say, oh, I know Austin has services that are designed to help them with disaster relief and response, what does that look like where I live? In any case, I'd love to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about the hackathon experience, and especially about diversity at hackathons. We're really lucky that HackerEarth has such a huge developer community that's all around the world because it gives us that diversity. But Tracey, I know that a lot of your work is focused on bringing diversity to hackathons. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So H.E.R DAO is a women-focused developer DAO. We've only been going for like 6 or 7 months, but we've helped hundreds of women access hackathons. And we've also provided travel scholarships because it's very costly sometimes to kind of travel. So we provided scholarships for people to come to conferences just like this, just like Consensus, And people have had such a great journey here because these conferences are really important for not just entering hackathons, but also progressing your career, learning more skills, gaining more knowledge, and networks. Networks are so important. So what we're actually doing as well is we're providing access. Access is, it's also the #1 thing that people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, women, diverse people need because there's such a lack of representation and a lack of people like me and women and
and the people on stage.
Yeah, true. So, H.E.R DAO seeks to intervene in that and to help funnel those people in, and we've been really successful. Yes, amen. But we've been really successful at hackathons. We were in NFT Berlin a few weeks ago, and we managed to win over half of the prize money. Wow. Right? That is like H.E.R DAO. So this is how powerful we have become. So we've become like a really great flagship for diversity, and we have lots of scholars here. H.E.R DAO people, put your hands up. But we have lots of H.E.R DAO people here, and CoinDesk and CRADL have obviously supported us. And yeah, we're just having a whale of a time. And we've got an amazing roadmap for the rest of the year, which I'll share later on.
Absolutely. I'm wondering, other folks on the panel, I know at Kayode we've talked about the importance of having people build for where they are, but why do we need diversity in tech and on these teams?
It's very important to have diversity because of trying to understand several problems that individuals are working on. Because organizing a program or organizing a hackathon program come with several challenges and several implications. And having different people coming from the various backgrounds, giving more value, more spice, and more understanding on how best to solve this problem at a particular time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Daniela, we've talked about the diversity, not just in the participants, but also having partners, right? People who are able to provide even a non-technical perspective to color the way you're approaching solving these problems. You mentioned a hackathon you'd worked on kind of recently. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So actually, when COVID started, we developed a series of hackathons that help especially women, migrants, and misinformation around COVID in Latin America. So we were partnering with different NGOs like Planned Parenthood Global, UNICEF, and several others in the government and private sector. And what we recognized was the importance of them bringing the data and also the storytelling. So people in the hackathon can really understood what was going on with these challenges. And from there, also, they help validate the solutions. So they were also bringing the people. So we really knew if the solutions were working or not. And at the end, in one example that they developed, actually a cookbook called La Receta de la Vecina, a cookbook that actually helped women that were facing violence. Just with a secretly message in a cookbook, they were understanding if women were facing violence, and also they were understanding how to get out of that. That example was just launching in 2 months. They were like 6,000 cookbooks already. A lot of women were receiving those, and so actually these partners, like the government and all the other organizations, were helping to spread that. So that's really important. We can just make something bigger, develop this ecosystem, and not just having in one technology and one type of partner.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of having just one type of partner and the importance of having diversity there, Ellis, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about some of the sponsors and partners that we have for Web3-a-thon and our approach to having so many and why that matters for solving problems.
Absolutely. So as far as the sponsors are concerned for Web3-a-thon, there are 17 sponsors across L1s, L2s, and various different projects. And we can kind of look at it like 17 individual hackathons all going on at one time. So a lot of fun, lots of opportunity, and basically the whole point here is bringing together diverse groups of talented individuals, both technical, non-technical, you name it, and having them actually design real solutions based on real problems, right, in their own location, in their own communities, whatever it might be. But then having basically the opportunity for them to come in, to submit their ideas to these various technologies. Those technologies and sponsors can then pick their favorite, bring them into the actual hackathon where they can try to create the best product possible, obviously. We've got over 50 prizes in this event, and there's over 150 opportunities for teams to be shortlisted, with right about 800,000 plus in prizes overall.
That's amazing. I'm so excited about this.
No small event.
Oh my goodness. I think the other piece about it that's great is we really want to make sure we're setting attendees up for success. I mean, especially from the technical perspective. Each of those sponsors have their own channel in Discord where you can ask them technical questions or non-technical questions. If you're trying to figure out how can I make my idea real, there's no better way to do that than providing resources and people to talk to help answer questions you have like that. But it's not just technical resources that set attendees up for success. I mean, Tracey, it sounds like you kind of crush it as far as making sure people are able to get the most out of hackathons. What's the secret sauce?
Well, we have a really, really good team. We have an excellent team leader in like Lena, and she's really crafted this really great program for scholars. And we also have Laura as well. So we just train people to mentor our scholars and our hackathon participants. There's a high degree of people who come with us who have never been to a hackathon and never participated in a hackathon. So there's a whole lot of prep that you have to do. So like maybe a couple of days before the hackathon, we'll kind of meet up online, go through, whatever prep needs to be done, go through questions, and just make sure people are comfortable and they know what to expect. Also, we like to form teams before we kind of get here. Sometimes we do it at the conference, but we were at the Hacker House a few days ago, just ideating and formulating what we were going to do and what tracks and what hackathons, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of support. Basically, mentorship and guidance and information dissemination. That's a key.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I know some of you who are joining online haven't been fortunate enough to have formed your team already, but what's great about Web3-a-thon is also in the Discord, we have channels so you can meet up with people in your area, in your time zone, so that you actually have people to talk to in real time. I mean, having a team you can work with and sync quickly and riff on ideas who know about you that you can get to know. Community is really important for solving problems, but even looking just at your team in your hackathon, that's going to be how you get the most out of the experience. So if you're watching this, all of you, just drop something in the Discord to freaking introduce yourself so that you can meet some of the amazing people who are participating in this. I think as we're sort of wrapping up, one question I have is the importance of having blockchain, and the reason we have to have hackathons in blockchain, and we're thinking about making the space more inclusive. I'm curious, Ellis, I know we've talked about sort of HackerEarth has such a huge Web 2 community, but bridging it over to Web 3. Any thoughts?
I think it goes back to what Tracey just said. It's the accessibility of information. And it's also the logic flow that information is presented into the participants, where they need to know where that info is or who to ask for help at any point in time, which obviously in an on-site format's a little bit different than in a virtual format, but it all comes back to kind of micro communities within this actual hackathon that are all kind of supporting each other, right? So the transition from Web 2 to Web 3 is really no different. It's accessible information, it's micro communities basically supporting people, then helping them transition with as much easy documentation as possible, right? And low barriers to entry. And I think that candidly, that's the biggest kind of hurdle, is getting people to understand how actually easy it is to participate in a hackathon, be it technical, non-technical, Web 2, Web 3, you name it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think the last thing, just before we wrap up, is what's one piece of advice you'd have for someone who's just starting at a hackathon? This is maybe their very, very first one. Anyone feel free to kick it off.
For me, I will encourage anybody to get into an hackathon program to have a very open mind, because you never can tell whatever thing you develop out of the hackathon program. Just be open and keep learning.
Yeah. And I guess it's all about the people. So, and popular sentence is like technology is not really the thing. It's about the people, the relationships, and the communities that you build. Be curious and share, and then great things will happen. We have seen that after hackathons, a few years later, a lot of startups just started from that point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I would piggyback off that and say, concentrate on mixed teams, mixed teams and mixed abilities. You don't have to have a team of rockstar, tech solidity developers. The tech side is important, but you also need, designers, project managers, make a holistic team, right, of diverse people, and you'll probably be more innovative and build a better project, basically.
And I think one thing that we talk, like diversity in tech, we're not the first panel on that ever in the world, but one thing that I think is under-talked about is the importance of diversity of skill sets, as you're saying, because there's so many pieces of expertise that go into making a team. We've all been on a group project, hopefully, where you've been like, man, it could have gone differently if we just worked together a little better. That's a learned skill. Yeah. And so hackathons aren't just for learning how to build code, and it's not just learning how to build your project either, like learning how to work with people. Ellis, I was wondering if you had any advice just as we're wrapping up.
Yeah, I mean, it really is figuring out how to, well, don't be scared to say hello, right? Don't be scared to make an introduction, go meet new people, go talk to different people with different skill sets, and ultimately try to fill out that team that is strong where you're weak, right? And hopefully you can build a very balanced group that's able to bring a great product to market. And candidly, the more diverse your team is, the better your product's going to look, the better it's probably going to function, and ultimately the more use cases it's probably going to serve. So don't be scared.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think the reason we're doing Web3-a-thon is because what Ellis just said is true for hackathons, but that's true for all of Web3. We need to get as many different types of builders in the space who feel comfortable contributing their ideas and working together. That's how we're going to make those use cases that blockchain's promised us for decades, and how we're going to get more than just the early adopters at the table. Thank you all so much for joining us. This was amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yay.
So really quickly, the next panel that we have is on generational wealth. Don't go away. We're going to do some quick mic swaps. If you want to talk to any of our speakers, be sure to meet them outside. But they're all amazing, so definitely try and talk to them if you're interested. Thank you.
Katherine.
Thank you.
Thank you.